Sorry, I had a network glitch. So, like I said, we are going to discuss through about 14 study session or more than that, like I said. And each study session, if possible, we will try and see that we cover two study session per meeting so that at least we will not be, uh, oh, the time will not catch up with us. Even though toward the end of the classes, we are going to have uh, individual and group assignment. So usually I used to distribute, even though I have to give an overall overview of what I'm expecting from you, but toward the last study session will be distributed in form of group assignment. But we still also discuss one or two things basically about what is expected of you to know and what is expected of you to write when you are writing uh, that part as an assignment. And also there is an individual assignment. So individual assignment would also be given, I think, toward the middle of the class. And the last one, which is quiz, you all know that quiz more or less a discussion part of the class. That is when I will know whether you guys are following, being part of the class, or you are lagging behind. So after every class, we are going to have some questions pertaining what was discussed in the class. So you will go and log into the LMS and answer those questions. But at least I want to call the attention of the student, please, to I don't have to restrict you with regard to where to source your information. You can use AI to source your information. You can browse. You can, but when you do that, please try and articulate this information, put it in your own words, and then post it there. Don't just copy something from AI response and paste it there, please. Try and read, understand, get the information, extract the important things, then submit to me. Is that clear? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Good.
It's clear, sir.
Good. So, like I say, so today we are going to start with study session one, and if possible, we also go into study session two. So under study session one, we're going to define biochemistry, just an introduction of biochemistry. We talked about the branches of biochemistry. We talked about some breakthrough, some findings that are very significant one in biochemistry. So I'm very sure that quite a number of you, this is the first time of being introduced to biochemistry, if I'm right, right? Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is your first
Yes,
time
sir.
of coming across anything biochemistry. So you will want to know what this biochemistry is all about and how this biochemistry even differ from chemistry. So if I want to start by defining biochemistry, I think the best way to start it because what you guys come across is chemistry, right? So let me then define chemistry. Or let me just ask you to remember what is a chemistry. When you remember what is chemistry, it will be easier for us to define what biochemistry is. So are you there? You remember that chemistry is a branch of science that deals with the chemical nature of matter. And maybe in addition, how this chemical nature determine the molecule interaction, the behavior when it comes in contact with each other. So in biochemistry, we also do the same thing. only that we are dealing with that chemical nature of a matter found in living organisms. So in biological system, how do these substances interact with each other based on their chemical nature? How the chemical nature determine biological processes, either through chemical reaction. And when we say a chemical reaction, we know it involves a complete transformation, conversion of reactant to product. So how this chemical nature determine the chemical reaction through complete transformation of chemical species that are involved, or how this chemical nature determine the chemical interaction between two molecules. Because you can have two molecules coming together, they will interact based on their chemical nature, but there is no chemical reaction that takes place between these molecules. So this is basically more of a physical interaction driven by the chemical nature of the species. And we all know all this electrostatic interaction. We all know hydrogen bonding. We all know dipole-dipole attraction, which we will come to discuss these things and how these things are more or less physical interactions, but are determined by the chemical nature of a molecule. Are we together? Class, are we together?
Yes, we are together, sir.
Good.
Yes, sir. We are together, sir.
So we are talking about these chemical substances found in biological system. What are these chemical substances actually? Humans and even any other organisms, you will find out that these substances are no more than what we know as elements. They are elements, and these elements react together to form compounds, we all know. So when this happened in biological system, these newly formed compounds were regarded as biomolecules. So we can remember the elements, maybe the first 20 elements, we can remember them. Is it all the elements that are found in the biological system? Of course, you can define quite a number of, here we have a list of quite a number of about 11 elements that are most commonly found in the biological system. These ones basically in human, but in any other organism, basically these are the elements: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, magnesium, and some other ones. But majorly, we have this 11 that constitutes the whole organism. So everything in your system is made up of either one or either a combination of these things. So a combination of these things, we have this element coming together to give the molecules. And these molecules, biologically, we classified them. Some of them are amino acids. Some of them are sugars like glucose, popularly known. Although we talked about quite a number of sugars that you might not have heard of, but you will see them and you will know them. You will see their structures and you will see how those molecules or those sugars even differ from glucose. Why glucose is just one of those sugars. We talked about lipids, and one of them, there are also nucleotides. So we also talked about what are those nucleotides. So these elements can actually come together to form this compound: amino acids, sugars, nucleotide, and fatty acids. Are we together? Are we together?
Yes, sir, we can hear you right on.
Yes, we are together, sir.
Okay. So these biomolecules can further interact or react with each other based on their chemical nature, also to form what we call a macromolecules. And these macromolecules are protein, nucleic acid, carbohydrate, lipids. To simplify things, we can say basically amino acids can polymerize. More than one amino acid can come together to give what we call a protein. More than one nucleotide can come together to give what we call nucleic acid. More than one sugar can come together to form a polymer we call carbohydrate. And we also have 2 or 3 of this fatty acid that can come together to give what we call lipids. And these are what we call macromolecules. These macromolecules can also also react with themselves to form what we call supramolecules. These supramolecules like membrane, cell membrane, we'll talk about cell membrane and we'll see how cell membrane is made up of lipids and proteins. And to some extent, we can see some carbohydrates as the form part of it. Another example is organelles. These organelles are also made up of this membrane and some other constituents which we will come to see. So it is these supramolecules, the membrane, the organelles, that comes together to give what we call a cell. And more than one cells can come together to give what we call a tissue. More than one tissue or group of tissue will come together to give what we call an organ. More than one organ give a system, and more than one system work together to give an organism. And that constitutes the basis of life. So basically, when you look at it from this explanation, we will get to know that the overall organism is actually made up of these elements. These elements that combine together in a different way, guided by a different mechanism, through different type of reactions, to give rise to what we see as an organism. That organism, be it a human being or any organism you can think about. Here we have the composition of element composition of a human body. When you see a human being, it's basically made up of all those things. It's made up of water, which is 62%, and we know what water is. Water is H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. It's made up of about 16% of protein. We'll come to know what is this protein. We just mentioned that protein is from amino acids. What are those amino acids? We'll come to see that these amino acids are nothing but a compound made up of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen to some extent, sulfur to some extent. We'll know these minerals. We know what are these minerals. All these calcium, magnesium, chlorine, etc. 6%. Carbohydrate, we know what are carbohydrate. We made a mention of glucose and some other sugars. And we'll come to see this glucose. Which element and which element come together to give glucose? Basically, glucose or carbohydrate, we call them hydrated carbons. So they are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. We'll also talk about lipids, and we'll see what these lipids are made up of. Lipid or parts. They are made up of fatty acids, and we'll see these fatty acids are made up of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. We'll discuss in detail. So this is basically what biochemistry is all about. We are dealing with the chemical reaction that occur in biological system. I think, are we together? If we have a question on this.
Yes, sir, we have.
Okay, please, go ahead.
Sir, please come again on these micromolecules.
Okay. Like I said, living things are made up of these elements. And these elements come together to give what we call molecules, right? From chemistry, we know that elements combine to give compounds, right? So we call
Yes.
compounds, or we call it molecules here in this case. So these molecules, because they are found in biological system, we now call them biomolecules. And we give example of these biomolecules. We say amino acids, sugars, nucleotides, fatty acids, right?
Yes, sir.
Good. So we said these biomolecules can further also interact with each other, or can interact with each other, or they can interact with some other same molecules to give what we call macromolecules. And I gave an example. Sorry. I gave an example that amino acid can form a polymer, where you have more than one amino acid react with each other to form a very long polymer of amino acids, and we call that a protein. So protein is a macromolecule.
Okay.
So also, in the case of sugar, we can have more than one sugar come together through formation of bond. So you have one sugar attached to another to form a bond. Another one will also attach to that one like this, until we have a very long polymer, and we call it carbohydrate. So also in the case of nucleic acid, we have nucleotides that can come together to form a very long polymer of nucleotide. We call it nucleic acid. Are we together?
Yes, sir. I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have another question? Okay. In the absence of another question, I move to branches of biochemistry. What are these branches of biochemistry? Yes, biochemistry, just like as we mentioned, that the biochemistry itself is also a branch of chemistry and biology. It on its own also subdivided into different areas, depending on the relevance of that area to a particular field. For example, now let me start with the medical biochemistry, because this is more relevant to what you guys are doing as a nursing student. In medical biochemistry, like I said, we are talking about chemical reactions that occur in biological systems. What are those chemical reactions in biological system that are related to medical conditions, to disease, for example? So in medical biochemistry, we are dealing with most of these biochemical reactions, biochemical processes that were affected by those reactions that are related to disease or medical conditions. We call them biochemical disorders. For example, we are in diabetes, in cardiovascular disease. What are those biochemical reactions that are related to these conditions, for example? And think of any other disease. So we have quite a number of reactions that this reaction is affected. When this reaction is affected, normally the reaction is supposed to be carried out in a normal condition. And if that reaction is not occurring, maybe due to the problem with the enzyme that is involved, maybe due to the problem with the reactant itself, or the reaction occur, but the product that was formed is not what is expected, maybe due to a deficiency somewhere. And that can lead to a condition that may end up becoming or manifesting at physiological level as what we call a disease condition. But at biochemical level, we call it a biochemical disorder. So we'll come to see some of those, I think when we are doing metabolism, we'll come to see some of those reactions that are being linked to quite a number of a disease condition. Another one, we have enzymology. In enzymology, we are dealing with enzymes. Just like in chemistry, we know that when A reacts with B, they can give C, or they can give C and D. But mostly, you can have what we call a catalyst, What does that catalyst do is to facilitate the formation of C and D. Even without catalyst, we know that the reaction may occur, but without that catalyst, it will occur maybe it will be very slow. But with a catalyst, it will be within a short period of time. So in biochemistry, we also have what we call an enzymes. And these enzymes are nothing but something like catalysts. They facilitate the formation of a product. So these enzymes, we have a specific field we call enzymology. In enzymology, we study the enzymes, we study the reactions they catalyze, we study how do they catalyze that reaction, which is basically the mechanism of the enzyme. In some cases, you will come, when you do metabolism also, you will come to see quite a number of drugs. Some of them you even know that these drugs actually are targeting some particular enzymes. Maybe the disease in question is due to abnormality of that particular enzyme. Maybe the enzyme is doing more than what is expected of it to do. So you give a drug that will go maybe and inhibit that particular enzyme and stop that enzyme from doing what it is doing. Or when that enzyme is not doing what it's supposed to do, you can have a compound or a drug that can go and bind to that enzyme, maybe and activate the enzyme so that the enzyme would now perform its own function. Are we together? So that area, we call it enzymology. We also have toxicology. In toxicology, we are dealing with adverse effect of foreign chemicals. How these foreign chemicals or substances, when they get ingested into the body, how do they affect biochemical reactions? And when they affect biochemical reactions, of course, they lead to adverse effects. They lead to some conditions that they are conditions of abnormalities. So in toxicology, we study the effect of these foreign chemical substances. We also have pharmacological biochemistry. In pharmacological biochemistry now, which is somehow opposite to toxicological biochemistry when you look at it from this angle. When these foreign chemicals usually taken in form of drugs, because drugs are taken into the body as foreign chemicals, the body doesn't know them, but they are taken with an intention of doing a good thing. Unlike toxins, where when they enter, they causes disruption. They affect biochemical reactions. They affect physiological processes. But in pharmacological biochemistry, we are dealing with when these chemical substances enter the body, how do they interact with these chemical reactions, signaling process, and do the good of what they are expected to do. Of course, they are drugs, and what they are supposed to do, definitely it is determined or expected to be a good thing. We also have industrial biochemistry. In industrial biochemistry, this is where some biochemical reactions are studied and then being used in industries for the production purpose. For example, you have a particular enzyme in your system that convert a one molecule to citric acid. And we need citric acid for some industrial production. You can take this enzyme, put it in a bioreactor, in a container, give all the conditions needed for the reaction to take place, put those reactants, it will convert those reactants to product. We have seen yogurt production. Yogurt has been produced using some of these enzymes, production of biofuels, production of so many things at industrial level involve the use of these enzymes. And sometimes even instead of enzymes, microorganisms are used. If this microorganism contain these enzymes, so you can take this microorganism, you can feed it with those reactants, it will convert those reactants to product. We have many other fields like environmental biochemistry, which deal with environment, removing environmental or toxic chemicals. So we have quite a number of them. Like I said, you can check on them. We also have some breakthrough in biochemistry. Breakthrough in biochemistry are nothing but some, excuse me, some significant findings historically been made, and which, even if you are not a biochemist, you should be able to know about them. For example, like the discovery of DNA